It seems like the bad news won't stop coming. At this point, every routine trip to the grocery store has become a cause of distress. Already, Americans have seen food prices go up for 20 consecutive months, but the nightmare isn't over. Morgan Stanley Research shows that the price of some food staples is set to shoot up by 65% from current levels as an increasing number of companies continue to announce price hikes, and new disruptions on the supply chain threaten the food and energy security of our entire country. This is extremely serious, folks. Our finances will be hit even harder in the months ahead, and millions of households that are already on the brink of financial disaster are about to be pushed over the edge. All of the efforts made by authorities to tame this price spiral have clearly failed, and at the end of the day, we're all paying for it. We have a lot to cover in today's video, but before moving on, please support our work with a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. We're being told that this isn't a recession, and yet it's been 6 months that our economy has been shrinking, and 20 months food prices have been rising. A new forecast from Bloomberg says it is 100% likely that the recession will continue into next year, which means that conditions for about 3 in 4 American households are still going to get worse than they are right now. Honestly, that's hard to conceive, especially considering that about a quarter of households in the U.S. have eaten significantly less in September compared to the month before, according to a new survey released by Morning Consult. That's almost a 10% increase from August, which really exposes how rapidly the pain is spreading across our nation. 43% of consumers are having to dial back on purchases of meat, opting for generic brands and searching for discounts to be able to make ends meet. And wealthier households aren't immune from the trend either, with the share of Americans who earn $100,000 or more now buying less food due to soaring prices hitting 19% last month, up 6% from a month prior. Meanwhile, 27% of shoppers earning $50,000 or less per year are also cutting back. Morning Consult's researchers noted that current shopping trends marked a stark contrast compared to last year, when many Americans were panic buying and hoarding food items. Now, they can't afford to do that anymore. Consumers are purchasing only the necessities and waiting for sales or their next paycheck to be able to purchase non-essential items, the researchers added. The truth is that almost everyone in the U.S. is concerned about the rise in the cost of food and consumer goods due to inflation. A Pew Research Center poll conducted last week found that 73% are very concerned and 22% are somewhat concerned about the rise in prices, while a combined 93% are very or somewhat concerned by the rise in gasoline. Another 87% was similarly concerned about the rise in housing costs, and 70% were concerned about how the stock market is doing, the Pew poll reported. The survey finds that inflation remains the dominant economic concern for Americans, Pew pollsters wrote. Moreover, 42% said they were often or sometimes worried their food would run out before they'd be able to afford to buy more. With all of these sobering numbers proving that nearly all Americans are facing money problems so acute it affects the way they're eating and purchasing food, it's hard to accept that more economic challenges are coming for us. Morgan Stanley Research says there's little relief in sight on grocery store bills. Executives at large food manufacturers and analysts expect food inflation to accelerate this winter and into 2023. Food staples such as vegetable oils and wheat and grain-based products are expected to rise by almost 2/3, or around 65% from current levels, as we head towards the end of the year, they noted. The price of items like pasta and bread are expected to rise by 60% and 40% respectively. the worst wheat harvest in nearly 50 years, and the Ukraine crisis are major contributors to the coming increases. But that's not all. The price of milk, which already rose 29.3% over the past year, is expected to face a 10.1% gain. Prices of breakfast cereal, which already jumped by 17%, are set to go 6.6% higher, while cheese, up 10.4%, is set to surge by another 4.2%. Margarine, up 44%, is likely to suffer a 17.2% increase. Flour and prepared flour mixes, which already went up by 24.2%, can see a dramatic 10% increase in the next few weeks. Chicken prices, which faced a 22% spike this year, you can record another equally high increase during this holiday season. And if you're shopping for Thanksgiving, good luck, because turkey prices are going through the roof. A few weeks ago, the American Farm Bureau Federation announced that families can expect to pay record high prices at the grocery store for turkey. But it's safe to say nobody could imagine that the retail price for fresh, boneless, skinless turkey breast would actually skyrocket by 112% over the last 12 months. That's not a joke. At this same time in 2021, turkey prices were $3.16 per pound. Today, they're at a record high of $6.70 per pound. Let me repeat that, $6.70 per pound for turkey. The Bureau also highlighted that due to the bird flu epidemic, egg prices, already up by almost 40%, could suffer another 15 to 20% spike. Once prices hit a certain level, they tend to stay there or go up, but rarely down, explains Morning Consult analyst Emily Mulquin. As we reported in many of our previous videos, a number of factors have contributed to this relentless surge in the cost of food. Even if some of the situations stabilize, it'll take a while for those changes to reach consumers. But recently, Hurricane Ian forced the temporary closure of one of America's largest fertilizer production facilities, and food industry and agriculture experts are warning it could result in yet another gain in grocery store prices. There's concern about storm surge, flooding, things that could impact land use, whether it's for growing crops, whether it's for fertilizer, farmer Jeff Flock said during an interview with Fox Business. And eventually, those things work their way into the ingredient costs and then work their way down through the system to the prices that we see in the grocery store, he continued. Food producers aren't seeing any end to inflation in terms of their labor and commodities cost, explained KK Davey, the president of client engagement at market research company IRI. The firm expects overall grocery bills to rise between 5 and 10% next year. Similarly, Mondelez CEO Dirk Van de Poort said his company expects the near-term inflation to remain high. The maker of Oreo and Ritz said that its energy, transportation, packaging, and raw materials costs remain elevated, and it announced further price increases to offset these higher costs. On the same note, General Mills, which makes everything from Cheerios to Blue Buffalo pet food, also announced it will increase the price of its products by 14% to 15% for its 2023 fiscal year, led by a rise in prices of ingredients such as nuts, fruits, and flavors. The company is planning to introduce additional price hikes for its retail customers this holiday season. And you may not be able to count on any holiday sales this year. For manufacturers to increase promotions, supply chain disruptions would have to end and costs would have to fall significantly, CEO Jeff Harmoning said. We don't see any of those things. In the past, consumers may not have noticed higher prices because their wages kept pace with the increases. Right now, that's not the case. Consumer prices are increasing faster than wages are increasing. What we're seeing now is really a cost of living crisis, the executive stressed. Sadly, he is right on target. The high prices of everything are forcing millions of workers in the U.S. to cut into their savings just to stay afloat. Since January 2021, monthly savings have fallen by 83%, and inflation has wiped out a month's worth of earnings for half of American workers. We have reached a point where over 2/3 of all Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. A Lending Club survey exposed that, as of September, 63% of Americans were living paycheck to paycheck. A year ago, the number of adults who felt strained was closer to 57%. This further demonstrates that most Americans are literally teetering on the brink of financial disaster, and it won't take much to push them over the edge. Adding insult to injury, the devastating global energy crisis that has erupted is likely to intensify as new supply chain disruptions interrupt the flow of energy supplies in our country. Bloomberg reports that new transport woes, both for river and rail, are threatening the nation's food and energy security. A drought that's still spreading across the U.S. Midwest is drying up the Mississippi River and its tributaries that serve as a critical freight artery for the country. According to FreightWaves Executive Director Rachel Premack, the barge industry is crucial for moving aluminum, petroleum, fertilizer, and coal, particularly on the Mississippi River and its tributaries, she noted in a column at the transportation industry website last week. In all, about 60% of the grain and 54% of the soybeans produced in the United States are moved via the noble barge. Barges touch more than 1/3 of our coal as well, she wrote. The dwindling water levels have led to barge groundings, forcing blockages and days-long delays on the Mississippi and Ohio rivers, which are among the most important routes for U.S. heavy industry and agricultural shipments. Low water levels along the Mississippi mean it's more expensive and taking longer to get food and energy supplies to our distribution terminals. With the cost of transporting those supplies already up by 218%, we wonder how much of this increase consumers will ultimately absorb. There's also the risk of a railway strike. A majority of almost 12,000 unionized railroad workers voted earlier this week to reject a tentative labor agreement brokered by the federal government. There's a risk that if one group were to go on strike, others could refuse to cross the picket line, prompting a lockout from rail companies similar to what triggered the last big shutdown in 1992, according to Bloomberg. The U.S. supply threat could exacerbate the global food and energy crisis, which the International Monetary Fund says could be at least equal to the impasse that spurred social and political unrest in developing countries in 2007-2008. Halted or slowed barge traffic is worrisome for the world at large too. American exports of coal are key right now as Europe faces a massive energy crisis heading into winter, Premack wrote. Needless to say, it's never a good time to have a transportation crisis, and now is especially bad timing for new supply chain problems to emerge. This is going to be a winter like no other. Heating costs are set to reach $1,400 to $1,700 in all regions. And given that 1 in 4 Americans are already behind in their utility bill payments, it's safe to say many people won't be able to afford that. People are scared. They're worried. They're frustrated, said Lisa McGee, who coordinates the heating aid program for Community Concepts, Inc. in Lewiston, Maine. There's more anxiety this year than ever before. People are gonna be forced to choose between eating and staying warm this winter. There's a lot of uncertainty and factors in play that could still aggravate this situation. So, we truly hope you guys have got prepared ahead of time, because the next couple of months are going to be exceedingly challenging for millions upon millions of people. Thank you for watching. Please share this with friends and family, and we look forward to sharing our news with you next time.